Last week, many of you were here, we talked about, the holy fool, sacred foolishness. The holy fool is the one who subverts prevailing orthodoxy in order to point to the truth that lies beyond the immediate conformity. Right? The fool is the person who is willing to say what needs to be said, kind of cuts to the heart of things. The fool is the misfit. Did anybody relate to that last week? Anybody feel some of those? Because I could very much see myself in that. I found this book as I was looking to combine April Fool's Day and Easter, which didn't seem a likely combination at all. I realized that Jesus was indeed looked at as the fool in his time. He was a misfit. He didn't fit in. He was preaching a message that didn't make sense to people. He was outside of the orthodoxy of what was accepted, and he was willing to do that. And so that really spoke to me because I have felt myself so often the misfit, especially as a kid. I was a kid that I didn't fit in anywhere. I have a huge Latin family, over 65 first cousins, and I never felt like I fit, even in my family. At school, I didn't look like anyone else. You know, it was not fun. It wasn't a great time for me. Childhood was not great. So I related very much to the idea of Jesus being a misfit. And I found this book, Jesus the Fool, The Mission of the Unconventional Christ. And the author, it says, was actually looking for the real Jesus, the man who didn't care what people thought, who worked on the Sabbath, which was not supposed to happen, right? He touched the unclean, he ate with sinners, and generally contradicted what was acceptable to the leadership of his day. And the author found that character in him. Saintly fools prefer life out in the open. Saintly fools prefer life out in the open in the secular world, intentionally making themselves conspicuous and consistently defying the rules set by society. I feel like that's a lot of who we are. You know, as we talk about love and light and beauty and joy, and that life doesn't have to be misery and suffering, there are people who look at you and say, "Oh, you silly thing." Yes. Right? How foolish. Don't you know how scary and awful the real world is? No. You know, where we know that this world where people feel connected, the joy that we feel when we come here, the joy that we feel when we come together is as much the real world as is anything else that's out there. Yes. Right? Yes. Your experience, your everyday experience, raising your kids, going to your job, being with your family, your loved ones, your neighbors, that is every bit as real. In fact, it is more real for you than all that other stuff you're hearing out there. Amen. All of that. And if people are calling you foolish, so be it. Yes. So be it. I've joked, kind of not, because it's kind of true, about do you remember the story of the Misfit toys, the island of the Misfit toys? How many people remember that? It's from Rudolph, the Christmas story, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And you know, there's that island where the toys that didn't quite make the cut, Santa's cut, end up on the island of the Misfit toys. So it's the choo-choo with the square wheels. And it's the rubber ducky that doesn't float. And I forget what other things, but there's they have all kinds of issues, these little misfit toys. But they're just as wonderful as the other toys, and they serve their purpose, and they have their own place in the grand scheme of things. And so I've often just kind of joked a little bit about us and feeling like I'm one of those misfit toys. And I feel like that is something that resonates for people, because we all, I think, on some level or another, feel like we just have never really quite fit in. Can anyone else relate to that? Yeah. You know, being the last one picked on the team, or not having the right family life, or not having the right job, or not being the right persuasion for whatever reason, and we feel somehow like we never quite fit in. But we're in good company. We're in good company. And honoring that sense, realizing that in your imperfection, you're actually perfect exactly the way you are, and part of the much bigger picture of life, you know, it serves all of us. And so I just want you to watch this little short clip. You may have seen before because I have shown it. I think once before. That shows you that we're in very good company.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Big difference. Big difference. As our administrative assistant, Kelly said, well, you know what's different about us here is that, you know, we own our freakiness. so fly your freak flag high. Now we're all in different levels of that, right? Some of us feel a little more different than others. Some of us have claimed that and moved on from it, right? But appreciate the fact that where change happens is at the growing edge. That's not where you're going to find the crowds. And that's what we are here to do. And we're talking about creating this world that works. We're talking about transforming our community. We're talking about transforming our own lives. You know, that means we've got to be willing to step out on the edge. And so kudos to everyone here and everyone watching that you're already a little bit on the edge, because it takes a little something to step out of the tradition, right? Of how many of you were raised in another spiritual tradition? Raise your hand. Right? Look around. And everyone has had the courage to step out of that and look for something new, look for something deeper. So kudos to you all for doing that. To be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. That comes from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a great mentor to Ernest Holmes. A great mentor to Ernest Holmes. I don't think in the flesh, but actually Ernest Holmes read Emerson, and he said it was like drinking water for him. It just gave him such life and such hope and joy in reading that. So to be yourself really is an act of courage. It's an act of courage to get in touch with who you are and follow that, to be true to yourself. But now for all of that, owning our differences and owning our uniqueness, we all want to belong, don't we? Right? How many of us want to belong? Every hand, right? We all want to belong in some way or another because we're wired to connect. A lot of time talking on this, and we've covered the first two rungs pretty well. The first two pieces there at the bottom of the pyramid, talking about our physiological needs and our safety needs. And for those who haven't heard this, Maslow is a psychologist who put together about a half dozen different theories of psychology, and they basically show up in this chart here. And what he's saying is that at the very bottom there, the physiological needs, this is what we all need as human beings. We all need these things. We're talking about air, food, water, shelter, sleep, clothing. All right, we all need those things. Those are universal needs. And until those needs are met, it's really hard to move up higher on that scale. The next thing that we have as human beings is we have needs for safety. So while you may have found a bridge that's a shelter so you can sleep under that, a homeless person, right? That there's a shelter, or you're sleeping on someone else's couch. You know, you've got a place to stay, that's covered, but that's not the same as having your safety needs met. Would you agree?
Yes.
Right? We all have needs for personal security. We want to have employment. We want to know that we've got health insurance. We want to know we have resources and health. Like all of these things are important for us. We all have those needs. Right? So once those needs are satisfied, we go on to the next level up, which is love and belonging, where we're going to focus today. And then we go on to esteem and self-actualization. And there is actually one more level that Maslow spoke about at the end of his life, which he called self-transcendence. And when you're in self-transcendence, you're living for something greater than yourself. Right? Whether it's your family or it's a cause, it's just knowing that you are part of something bigger. And when you identify that and you live from that, all those other needs are met. All of the other needs are met. As long as you are trying to meet the other ones, you're coming from a place of deficit, like I don't have enough. Coming from that I don't have enough place is going to create what for you?
Not enough.
More of I don't have enough. Exactly, because our thought and our words are seeds, and that is what we're creating from. So if we come from that place of, I just don't feel like I belong, I'm not getting enough love, and doing everything we can to try and get there, we push it further away from ourselves.
Amen.
Right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So human beings are fundamentally and pervasively motivated by a need to belong. That is a strong desire to form and maintain enduring interpersonal attachments. Now that's very academic language, but it gets to the point. It's what it is true. And that comes from a landmark study done in 1995 that's referenced in all the literature when you look at belonging. So we all have this need to belong. And there are great benefits. There's reasons for that. Right? And some of these are just, they're going to be very obvious to you. The benefits of belonging to something, some group larger than yourself, whatever you call your tribe, be it your family, be it your buddies, be it your church community, your workmates, your posse. There you go, there's another word there. Your tribe, your posse, your people. Everybody has a need to belong. People who feel connected, people who feel like they belong, that they have a place, they live longer. They actually live longer. They have stronger immune systems, so they're healthier. There are lower rates of anxiety and depression. No surprise there, right? We need these human connections. It helps our mental health. It helps your heart. You have higher degrees of self-esteem and empathy for others. Better capacity to regulate your own emotions. You know, maybe you don't fly off the handle as easily, or you don't go into depression as easily because you've got that grounding of support, knowing that people care about you and love you. Your social connection creates a positive feedback loop of social, emotional, and physical well-being. What does that mean? The better you feel, the more likely you are to be out there and reaching out to people and being part of something bigger, and the more joy there is in your life, and the greater your health, and the greater your emotional health. Now, the opposite of all of this is true as well. We don't belong in our tribe, we don't have a posse, we don't have our people. All of the other things happen. Right? Your lifespan, your life expectancy decreases. Your immunity goes down. You're more likely to get sick. You're more likely to be anxious and depressed. Your self-esteem and your sense of empathy, caring for other people, goes down because you feel like no one cares about you. Where you feel depressed, so you don't want to reach out to people and nobody's reaching out to you, and you get more depressed and you don't want to leave that. To belong, as different as we all are, and as much as we want to claim our differences, we still all want to belong. So how do we belong? How do you belong when you feel different? Is it possible even to belong?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're going to explore. And I'm sorry we don't have this book in the bookstore. It is very much worth your time. Download it, listen to it online, whatever you need to do. It's an excellent book by a woman named Brene Brown. It's called Braving the Wilderness, The Quest for True Belonging. True belonging. is being part of something bigger. Because this acquire it by fitting in and seeking approval. Right? Can you all relate to that? We want to belong, so we twist ourselves up and turn off parts of us ourselves and pretend we're something else. But it creates a barrier to it. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic and perfect selves to the world. Now there's a lot in that statement, so I'm going to unpack it a little bit. I'm going to take it, a piece at a time. First piece we talked about, that belonging is an innate human desire that we all have. This next part I think is vital, is critical. Fitting in is not the same as belonging. Fitting in is not. It's not true to you. It's not true to the people around you. People will always know. Right? Fitting in is about assessing your situation, right? Where am I? Who am I with? What are these people about? And becoming who you think you need to be so that you can be accepted by that group. Right? Would you all agree?
Yes.
That's what it is to fit in. Can you see how fitting in is not the same as belonging? Right? So what's happening now, what she talks about in the book, I think is just fascinating. That we've got all of this connection now with social media, right? We can reach out to anybody. I mean, how many of you have friends you hadn't seen in 40 years, right? From high school, and you're connecting with people, so we're all connected in some ways, but there is much less belonging, right? People have gone into factions. Right, so you've got your liberals and your Democrats and your Republicans and your conservatives and your vegans and your carnivores, and we've got all of these factions, and people like to be in their own little groups because we like to be part of a bigger group. But those groups are not based on right? Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's not, it's not life. Sense of, well, it's nice, there are other people who believe in what I do, right? But it's not going to meet that need of deep belonging and feeling like you're part of something bigger. Belonging. Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic and perfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So when we're trying to belong, we're putting our best face on for the world, aren't we? Right? How many of us put our ugly pictures on Facebook? Never. You always put your best stuff, right? When you want to tell everybody the good things, the great things that are going on in your life, right? And it gives people a sense of, wow, everybody else's life is so great. Why is mine so lousy? So we put our best face forward always, thinking that that's going to help us belong to whatever the in crowd is, maybe, or I don't know. I know that we do it. You agree?
Yes.
You do it? Yes. However, doing that is what ends up pushing us away from other people. Our sense of belonging can't be greater than our own level of self-acceptance. Do you love yourself? Do you love yourself? Are you willing to claim your misfit, you're weird, you're freaky, you're not good enough, you're whatever your stuff is. We all have it. We all have it. Believing you are enough is what gives you the courage to be authentic, vulnerable, and imperfect. And that is what facilitates belonging. When you can be your true self is when you can really belong. It's what people want to know. It's the you that people want to be in touch with. That's okay. That's my baby. That's one of my babies. So what are we to do? He just wants to belong. He's welcome to come up. It's fine. Belonging everywhere and nowhere. Belonging everywhere and nowhere. That's it. Comes from a quote from Maya Angelou. Come on, sweetie. I'll let him hang out here as long as he doesn't take my mic off. Belonging everywhere and nowhere. It's an interesting idea. The men and women, this also all of this stuff comes from Brene Brown. Most of it from that book, but she's got several other books that she's written. She's got a couple of TED Talks that are very much worth your time. She talks about vulnerability and shame. You know, shame is one of those things that we all carry. We all have, but because it's so deep, we don't want to let people see those pieces of us. Right? But that's the thing that puts the walls between us and others. Not to say that you need to be airing out your dirty laundry with everybody.
Amen.
But that you have your people, that you have your posse, that you have your family, that you have your people where you can really be yourself. Everyone needs that. So the men and women who have the deepest sense of true belonging, are the people who also have the courage to stand alone. There's the paradox, right? To be true to ourselves. They are willing to maintain their integrity and risk disconnection in order to stand up for what they believe in.
Amen. It's called freedom.
It's called freedom. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. When you when you belong to yourself,
Amen.
when you can know who you are, when you can live in your truth, when you can know what your values are, when you can come from that space, you're unshakable.
That's right.
Then you can belong anywhere.
Speak the word.
Anywhere.
That's it.
Am I turned into a preacher? Once we belong thoroughly to ourselves and believe thoroughly in ourselves, the people on the outside accepting you. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with you accepting yourself and loving yourself and appreciating all of your imperfections. Right? If you're that square peg, then so it is. So it is. There's a pegboard where you fit. Stop trying to fit in the round holes. It's not yours. It's not yours.
So perfect.
They fit very well with mine. And I'm sure they fit very well with Ron's. So we belong everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's having that courage to say, this is who I am, and I don't need to be part of that crowd. I can be myself. And I can be at home anywhere I go. From being that misfit kid who was picked last for every team, who was always just too big or too smart or I don't know, too dark. Oh, that was another one. You know, there was never anyone that looked like me. I was 14 years ago. I was the only one, I think, with dark hair. I was proud. I knew when I walked in that I had met kindred spirits. I knew that even though we looked different on the outside, the world, right? And I see the same thing here. We have such diversity. In people, in ethnicity, in age, in socioeconomic levels, all of those things. It's beautiful to behold. But what do we have in common? We have maybe, and it maybe is that compassion that comes from feeling like the outsider.
Yes.
Right? That's a way to turn that around. It's because because we have known what it is to feel misfit, because we have known pain, because we have known suffering. And go back now to pull other people along. Yes? Right? We are all at different levels of this. Housing that it looks like hands, and I can't do it with this one, but we've got hands, and someone is holding the hand of the person they are pulling up. The mentor, always the person who's gone a little bit further, who knows a little bit more, and you hold that hand.
Amen.
And we are all in this together, right? And we all help each other, because as we help others to rise, we rise ourselves.
Amen.
And that is the commonality that I see in this place, and the people who are watching, that we're all here because we want to leave our mark and make a positive difference in this world. What did I say? He's yawning. He said Grandma's talking too much. This is why I want to leave the world a better place, right? That's exactly why. That's exactly why. So, belonging everywhere and nowhere. When you can belong to yourself, you can be any place and know that you are home. So that brings us to our affirmation, because Ellis thinks I'm done. I am true to myself, embracing the freedom of belonging everywhere and nowhere. And now let's say it again, all together, like we're all ready. And mean it and feel it. I am true to myself, embracing the freedom of belonging everywhere